Physical Graffiti 1979, a very important album for Led Zeppelin. This is extremely highly regarded, probably more than Houses of the Holy. A lot of people consider this their best album. A lot of people consider this their favorite album too. But this album, there's definitely a lot to talk about, and there's a lot to get into, so I'm just gonna get straight into it. This is a double album, and it is short by absolutely no means. It's about 85 minutes, I think. And basically, structurally, what this album is they wrote 8 songs originally at 1974, around that time. And then basically it was a bit too long to put on one piece of vinyl. I think it was about 50 minutes, something like that. And so they thought, well, rather than take a song off or shorten a couple songs, they'd actually get unused material from albums Led Zeppelin 3, Led Zeppelin 4, and Houses of the Holy, and then use that unreleased material to fill up 2 pieces of vinyl. Now, what this makes for, in my opinion, is a very inconsistent album in terms of the quality of writing. And I'll talk about that and the whole double album and the sort of add-on tracks later, but basically the unused material sort of overall brings down the quality of the whole album in my material, and in my opinion they definitely should have shortened a couple songs, took a song off maybe, and then released it as a single album. And in fact, if this is the first time encountering this album, I would not actually recommend listening to Physical Graffiti. I would recommend putting the 8 tracks into a playlist and then listening to that as a first time, and then going back and listening to Physical Graffiti, the entire album. And this is because when you listen to Graffiti 8, the original 8 songs, the writing is the genius, and the stylistic creativity is all there, and you can really feel it. Feels like an album. When you listen to Physical Graffiti, it almost doesn't feel like an album. It doesn't flow as well because the writing just isn't consistent. It just doesn't feel like it works. But if you put the original 8 songs into a playlist, listen to that. That is one of the best Led Zeppelin albums in my opinion. Physical Graffiti, as it is not one of the best Led Zeppelin albums in my opinion. Now, stylistically, this album is in some ways even more stylistically varied than Houses of the Holy, and that album is legendary for how much experimentation and going out of sort of the Led Zeppelin area of music that was. But this album does it better in my opinion. It feels less contrived, very much less contrived, because on Houses of the Holy I felt, okay, you're gonna do grunge, they're gonna do funk, you're gonna make Jamaica, gonna do reggae, but this doesn't feel like that. It feels like it was just natural, all the different stylistic elements that they took in. You know, Trampled Underfoot is a very kind of lots of funky flavors in there, but doesn't hit you over the head with funk. It just works very well, and at its core it's just really well written rock music at its core, which is why I think this works way better, flows way better, the stylistically feels more focused if you're looking at the stylistic variation of it. Obviously I've talked about the writing and how that I feel is a bit iffy, but stylistically this is absolutely amazing album. We got progressive elements in songs like In the Light, and really big epic orchestral stuff, the really famous song Kashmir, and blues stuff, obviously going back to the early blues stuff, kind of taking from other blues artists, much older blues artists, and kind of just changing it completely and turning it into Led Zeppelin in the case of In My Time of Dying. So yeah, let's move on to the performances. Now, Robert Plant, immediately you start with Custard Pie, and his voice is way better. House of the Holy, the vocals had some absolutely brilliant moments, like No Quarter and Over the Hills and Far Away, but this just feels like he mastered the kind of singing in that sort of deeper voice, because he can go extremely high, Robert Plant, but on this it feels much better. It feels like he really is in control of his voice and just absolutely amazing performance. Very, very emotionally convincing. As I said, just going back to the blues stuff where Robert Plant is just legendary for how much he can make you feel the emotion that's in the lyrics. So yeah, great performance, absolutely love it. Jimmy Page, guitars, again, amazing. Great riffs, great licks, great just massive slide guitar solos all over the place. Sounds absolutely amazing. Not as good as, you know, the earlier albums, but absolutely amazing performance. These albums are probably more about the writing for me than just pure performance, which the first albums are just absolutely legendary for their performances, but this is just a really solid performance from Jimmy Page. Now we move on to John Paul Jones. Now this is the performance that is significantly not as good. Good's not quite the right word, because part of that is just because the bass is turned lower in the mix. That's why John Paul Jones doesn't quite shine as much, although he does have some absolutely shining moments, because, you know, with the synthesizers and his keyboard and piano work, absolutely amazing. Love all of that stuff. And the synthesizers and the piano just work great with the Led Zeppelin sound, and it is an absolutely integral part. You know, you think Led Zeppelin, you think vocals, guitar, bass, drums, but the synthesizer and keyboards absolutely essential to their sound, in my opinion. Bonham, again, amazing performance. John Bonham's one of the greatest drummers ever. Just some huge fills, really fast, showing off the speed and intensity, and just hitting really, really heavy. So great performance. Now let's talk about a bit about the production. Now, the production doesn't sound as good as House's, in my opinion. It doesn't quite feel as epic at times. You know, you got songs like Kashmir, which are amazingly produced with the, you know, all the orchestration and all that kind of stuff. But the production just doesn't feel quite as good as House's or Led Zeppelin 4. Probably better than the first few albums. But yeah, not my favorite Led Zeppelin production, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Another bit of history that I kind of glanced over was they started their own record company, Swan Song. Very, very famous nowadays, Swan Song. But so yeah, they moved away from Atlantic Records. I'm not sure why they did, but they did, and it absolutely shows how popular the band were, that they'd actually just make their own record company to release whatever they wanted. Now, the artwork for this album, I'm not a big fan of it, I'm just gonna say it. Extremely iconic, works great on, you know, the old vinyls where it was absolutely massive, but I'm just not a big fan of it. You know, there's not many nice colors there. It's just a bit bland and boring, in my opinion. So yeah, that's basically it for the writing and the style. Now, we've got a long track list to go, so let's just get started with the first track, which is Custard Pie. Now, this is a classic Led Zeppelin opener, in my opinion. Very forgotten a lot of the times. Not many people talk about it, but it is an absolutely amazing opener. Going with the theme of the Led Zeppelin albums, just a really kind of short, riffy kind of song, just some really upbeat riffing, contrary to what they would do later in this album, which is much more kind of sad and a bit darker and deeper. But this is just some extreme distortion from Jimmy Page. This is one of Led Zeppelin's heaviest albums. The guitar sound gets extremely heavy, especially for 75. Some of the heaviest guitar work of at the time, actually. It's just a really, really groovy track, this, and singing lower. Robert Plant's definitely singing a little bit lower than usual. So yeah, Custard Pie is an amazing way to open this album. And then we move on to Rover. Now, this song is the first of the kind of songs that they added on from unreleased material. And it's from the House of the Holy sessions in particular. And the guitar work is great. I really like the guitar work. Sounds a little bit weird, doesn't quite sound like normal kind of Led Zeppelin guitar work, but the vocal style is extremely unique, and it worked quite well in my opinion. This is one of the better kind of later edition kind of tracks, but yeah, so it's just really great melodic lines all throughout this song. And it's just a really, really epic song, actually. It's not that long or anything, but that's what I feel when I listen to it. So yeah, it's a great chorus, and use of the clavinet just to add some more layers to it, which I really like. And the next song is a monumental song, In My Time of Dying. Now this is a blues epic, just kind of like Since I've Been Loving You, but this sounds nothing like Since I've Been Loving You. Extremely bluesy riff to begin, very dark, very of traditional blues, extremely sad, as the title implies, blues, you know. In My Time of Dying just sounds very sad, oozes of sadness and darkness. Amazing drumming on this song. Throughout this entire song, John Bonham plays some amazing fills that are just so heavy and just completely fill your speakers when he plays those fills. And then, you know, you got the riff and then the bass comes in and it's just absolutely amazing. This is extremely hardcore blues. Most rock bands would never get this bluesy at this kind of a level. Especially at the sort of beginning 2 or 3 minutes of this song. Extremely bluesy. And this song is just incredibly atmospheric, talking about how very dark it is. Just amazing tone throughout this song, and it slowly builds and builds until you just got the riffing and the fills and all of that kind of stuff. Amazing vocals by Robert Plant, by the way. And so yeah, just really raw performance, I think. Obviously, these albums are extremely well produced, but the performance and the whole vibe feels extremely raw. And this song actually isn't that complex at all. That's the thing about Led Zeppelin, is they're able to make extremely enjoyable music, and that's, I think, something that often maybe album reviewers don't talk about as much, is that an album is just enjoyable, you know? We often overanalyze things, and I'm guilty of this myself as well, but often we forget that sometimes music is just incredibly enjoyable to listen to, just like this song. Absolutely amazing. One minor complaint, the solos aren't that amazing, but that's just me. The solos aren't the greatest Zeppelin solos in the world, but they're still really good. And so yeah, amazing kind of almost a drum solo. He's just playing a couple drum lines, but almost like a solo. So yeah, absolutely amazing. This song, not long at all. Well, actually, it is long, but what I meant to say was the pacing doesn't make it feel long at all. It feels extremely well paced. And so yeah, one of Led Zeppelin's best really long epic songs. And now we move on to Houses of the Holy. Now, unsurprisingly, this comes from the Houses of the Holy sessions. Meant to be the title track, obviously, but they decided to leave it off. And I can't really see why, to be honest. In my opinion, there are songs like Dancing Days and maybe The Ocean. Those are kind of normal rock songs. They could have put this in, because this is a really catchy song. Obviously nowhere nearly as good as this song or the next couple songs to come, but it's a really great riff, really nice, accessible music. Led Zeppelin have always been good at making accessible music, as well as the complex, deeper, darker stuff. So yeah, very, almost like Living Loving May, just a really catchy little tune. So yeah, it's a really good song, Houses of the Holy. Great groove, catchy chorus, that's all it is. Good song. And now I move on to Trampled Underfoot. Now this is the kind of funky thing, but unlike the crunge, I really like this song. This song is incredible. Starts out on that great riff that John plays on the synthesizer, I believe. So yeah, it's just a really incredibly catchy riff. Very kind of funky vocals, almost with a bit of a bluesy kind of licks, but it's mainly just funky style of vocals. But amazing style, amazing, much upbeat kind of a song. And this song just absolutely shows John Paul Jones' ability of contributing Led Zeppelin more than just the bass, because the synthesizer work is absolutely amazing. And now I move on to another monumental song, Kashmir. Now, this is extremely famous. Probably that riff, that chord progression that John Paul Jones plays, the really Eastern kind of Moroccan and Middle Eastern kind of chord progression or riff or whatever its technical name is extremely famous. Almost more famous than the song. Kind of like other like ridiculously famous riffs like Smoke on the Water or something. This is nothing like Smoke on the Water, but the riff has almost become more famous than the song. But this is more than a riff. This is absolute masterpiece. Obviously, the kind of idea is this sense of constantly moving and constantly traveling and about journeys and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, and this is really famous for how much orchestration there is. Violins and lots of orchestral elements working very well together to create these huge crescendos that are just absolutely amazing running throughout the song. And the drumming is another thing that's absolutely amazing, you know. Not the fastest and not the heaviest, but it's just played right. And in some ways, this song is actually about the drumming. But yeah, so really famous orchestration. And Robert Plant's voice is just a much more laid back kind of a voice, you know, just really smooth kind of a style. This isn't a very catchy song by any means, except for that riff, obviously. But yeah, just it's really about these huge crescendos that go out through the song and this constant sense of movement. Now, what I want to say about this song before I move on to the second disc or vinyl or whatever is I feel that this song should be longer. Now, this song is already like 8.5, 9 minutes long, but I feel that this song is so epic that they should have done more with it. It feels like this is like a really late demo version where they have the meat and just the meat of the song, and now they're going to write more elements around it to make it feel like a more complete piece of music. Like an intro section, because as soon as the song starts, they just start going into that riff. Build up, create some atmosphere, create some tension, and towards the end have a nice solo section, whether that be violin or some sort of orchestra instrument, or maybe a really nice guitar solo or something like that. And also, this song doesn't end on any sort of special note. It just kind of stops and fades out, which is one of the most boring ways to end a song ever. One odd comparison I'm going to make is listen to the song Call of Cthulhu by Metallica. Listen to how that song ends, because these two songs are very similar in how they're structured basically like classical pieces of music. And that it's mostly going around this idea and you adding layers and layers, and then at the end you just got this huge crescendo where all the instruments are going at 110%. The end to that song and the end to the Ride the Lightning album is absolutely amazing. That's how I think Kashmir should end. It should end on a much bigger note, but it doesn't. It just kind of fades out. So that's what I have to say about Kashmir, and that's what I have to say about the first disc. So now let's move on to the second one. So yeah, the next track is In the Light. Now this is the sort of progressive track, very reminiscent of No Quarter of the House of the Holy album. Now this starts with just basically some huge synthesizers that are just absolutely massive. Now, and this is a very atmospheric intro. This whole song almost has this sort of out of this world kind of feel, and this intro is absolutely amazing. Kind of reminiscent of Watcher of the Skies by Foxtrot by Genesis, where it's just huge synthesizers intros for minutes before anything else happens, basically. And so yeah, this is an absolutely extremely progressive song. We've got some amazing guitar playing by Jimmy Page, but the vocals are just absolutely unearthly. They're just really good. One of my favorite, one of Led Zeppelin's most underrated songs, In the Light. They decided not really to play it live almost at all, just because John Paul Jones said how hard it would be to replicate the sound live. But yeah, so this song is absolutely amazing. A little bit long. I feel it could have been trimmed, maybe just a little bit, but it's got this really nice groove in it. And they play this thing that's almost just a scale, but it's extremely effective and just really completes the song. So yeah, In the Light is a great song. And the next song is Bron-Y-Aur. And this is just a really little short kind of acoustic guitar piece. I quite like it. It's from the Led Zeppelin 3 sessions, and There's not much to say about it. It's just a nice little sort of acoustic guitar piece, which obviously Jimmy Page does a great job on. And now we move on to the next song, Down by the Seaside. Now this is from the Led Zeppelin 4 sessions, actually. And this is sort of a softer song, you know, not particularly heavy at all. And it's alright, you know, that's kind of the thing with the songs that they bring in from the unreleased materials. That was unreleased, taken off from the release of the album for a reason. And because they're just average songs, they're not really that special. So yeah, kind of a folky little song. It has some moments in it, but overall, it's not going to change the world. Now we move on to 10 Years Gone. Now this is a extremely dark song, very dark, very deep, absolutely great bass. The acoustic guitars are absolutely amazing. Got some great solos in here too, so I really like that. It kind of, at the end, kind of makes you feel a little bit hopeful after all this darkness and the Robert Plant's extremely atmospheric vocal performance. It kind of lifts up at the end, kind of. So yeah, 10 Years Gone is a really good song. Now we move on to Night Flight. Now this is from the Led Zeppelin 4 sessions, and I'm not a big fan of it. It's alright. It's kind of a little bit of a poppier kind of song. Actually, it doesn't have a guitar solo. One of the very few Led Zeppelin songs that don't have any guitar solo. And yeah, it's just kind of mediocre, not that special at all. Although it is kind of catchy, I suppose. Now we move on to the Wanton song. Now this song is extremely catchy. I really like this song. It has an absolutely amazing riff. Really nice crisp drumming from John Bonham. It's a really upbeat song, absolutely great vocals. So yeah, it's a really just nice, short, sweet song. So I really like this song. Now we move on to Boogie with Stu. Now this song and the next song is sort of the weakest moments of this album. This is from the Led Zeppelin 4 sessions, and I don't really like it at all, to be honest. It has a really interesting, unique kind of drum solo, and the whole sound of this song is very odd. Not really what I think about when I think about Led Zeppelin. And this song is just basically a jam. We have Ian Stewart on piano, so it sounds odd. It doesn't sound like Led Zeppelin, and I have nothing wrong with that, but the writing just isn't particularly special for me. So yeah, the second to last track is Black Country Woman. And this is from the House of the Holy sessions. And this is just a really simple kind of acoustic bluesy song. Not that special. It was the B-side for the Trampled on the Foot single. But yeah, there's just nothing special about it. It's not too long, so it doesn't really get in the way, but I don't like it, to be honest. Now we move on to Sick Again. Now this has an extremely heavy opening riff. The vocals are quite low in the mix because this song is really about the atmosphere and the guitar work in particular. So yeah, really heavy, and it's not my favorite of the original songs, but it's not the greatest way to end this album. I think they could have actually ended it with Kashmir, you know, the big orchestral epic, but there's nothing wrong with this song. Just nothing that absolutely amazing about it. Still better than the previous 2 tracks. So yeah, that concludes the track list for Physical Graffiti. Now, this is, I'm going to have quite a controversial opinion, I think, maybe. I'm actually going to give this album 2 scores. I'm going to give Physical Graffiti, the double album, a score, and I'm going to give Graffiti 8 a score, which is the 8 original songs put in a playlist. Listen to that, give that a score. But before that, what I think they really should have done is just release the 8 original songs as Physical Graffiti, as a single album. Again, shorten a couple tracks, maybe take a track off if they had to, and release the unused material as a B-side compilation. Because there's nothing wrong with releasing unused material. You know, you have unused material, you want to put it on something, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But put it on a B-side compilation, or well, I'm using the term B-side use, not like the actual use, but B-side is in unreleased kind of songs. Put that on a B-side compilation, And a lot of people that like this album like the unreleased materials. And to them I'd say, wouldn't it be better if you put the unreleased material on a B-side compilation and have it be really good, and that be really surprising, because you don't expect B-side compilations to be very good. I think the unreleased material on this album is alright, and goes from sort of alright to actually quite surprisingly good at times. But if you take that material and put it on a real Led Zeppelin album, then you expect it to be good, and when it's mediocre, you kind of feel like it's not really as good as it could be. So that's my feeling of the album. Now, Physical Graffiti, the double album, I'm going to give a 9 out of 10. But Graffiti 8, for me, is a 10 out of 10 album. Graffiti 8, the 8 songs are absolutely amazing. Some of Led Zeppelin's greatest songs on there. So yeah, those are my scores, and this is the review. I will see you later.